My name is Benjamin Portnoy. I am the hustler in chief of Side Hustle Elevator. And with me today, I have my friend Susette McNeel. Susette, by the way, I stole your tagline for our talk today. Relax, it's just sales tax. Susette is a licensed tax professional with 20 years of experience in income tax, sales tax, and property tax. She's the founder and president of GeoInvoice, a mobile sales tax app that gets sales tax rates anywhere. It streamlines the sales taxes, and it removes the complications of determining sales tax for business operations easily, directly, and accurately. And it's for sellers who don't work in traditional brick and mortar locations. So people who are mobile food vendors and maybe sell at fairs, festivals, trade shows, and that's just to name a few. If you accept payment or credit card, you need to be watching and listening to this webinar. So Susette, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk today.
Oh, you're welcome, Benji. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So I will be the first to admit I know very little about sales tax. I would guess I'm probably in the majority. It's one of those things that's sort of a necessary evil. But on your end, it's your life's work. It's something that you're an expert at. You just told me before we get on here that you're not only a certified public accountant, but you're like an international level 10 ninja accountant here. A CGMA. Tell us again what that is.
That stands for Chartered Global Management Accountant. It's a UK designation that if you're a CPA in the United States, you can take the test and become a CGMA, and it has an international flavor rather than just CPA, which is a domestic designation.
That's amazing. So what I'd like to do here, I want to hear a little about you and your background, and then I want to hit some sales tax stuff in general, and then I want to focus on the app and what it's used for. So tell us about you and your history and how you got started and where you've come.
Well, I'm a CPA, licensed in the state of Texas. I have 20 years of experience, primarily in the oil and gas industry, but I've done other industries. And then in 2013, I founded GeoInvoice, which is a mobile sales tax development company. And we primarily developed, the initial focus was to develop an application that was mobile, totally mobile. Mm-hmm. And we have the only application in the Google Play Store and in the App Store that is totally based on geospatial functioning. And we have a patent on it. So what it means is that you can be in the middle of a field selling something with your Square credit card reader, and if you need the sales tax rate for that, if you're selling a taxable service or a taxable good, you can use our app and get the rate anywhere, territorial waters, over a lake, because it's all based on the GPS functioning that's in your mobile device.
It's amazingly forward-thinking. So let's start there. When do I need to pay sales tax if I am a vendor?
Well, that depends on the state that you're in. And there are about 45 states. Alaska has not a statewide tax. It just has local taxes, sales tax. So there's 45 states, and every state has its own set of what I call tax rules. And the rules are the statutes, the regulations, the court cases, and the revenue rulings that determine what's taxable and what's not taxable. So it's very complex.
Sure, I can imagine. So how do you find out?
Well, you can go to any state revenue website, and you can look up the statutes and the regulations. Mm-hmm. There are proprietary services out there that have taxable rules specific for your industry. It is very, very complicated. It can be very daunting for a small and medium-sized vendor to try to spend the time to go wade through all the statutes and the regulations, the revenue rulings, and try to figure out, is this taxable? But I can say with some generality that most tangible personal property in the United States is taxable. Now, there are exceptions. Some states don't tax food, but if you're selling something that you can weigh, measure, smell, it's going to probably be taxable.
Okay.
Services is where the complexity comes in.
Okay, that's where I wanted to go next. But let's make this local. You and I are both here in just north of Houston, and so let's say I am going outside and I'm going to sell some ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
What would I do if I didn't? Which I should download your app, but if I haven't done that yet, how do I find out? Where do I go? Is it?
Well, the state of Texas, Texas Comptroller's website has a cloud-based search where you can put in an address. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the middle of the street selling ice cream, I guess you could get the address where you're closest to.
So it really is that complicated. It's
yes.
Down to the street.
So the first sales tax was enacted by Kentucky. It was a statewide rate, and I think it was back in 1930. You might be wrong about that. So that was the first sales tax rate. It was easy to figure that one out. You're in Kentucky, it's one rate. But as time has gone on, the complexity of these different, and I call them polygons or jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. More states enacted, more counties, cities that are constantly contracting and expanding with annexation and de-annexation. If a city of Houston annexes a full jurisdiction annexation, then it's subject to sales tax, and that goes on all the time. So it makes it very complicated and difficult to ascertain, are you inside this boundary or are you outside this boundary?
Yeah. And you could even cross that boundary based on what you're doing.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes they overlap. They're not congruent. You can have, one catty corner from another. So with geospatial functioning, there's no error. You just grab that long and you process it.
That's really cool. I'm excited to dig into that and hear more about the app. Before we do that, we have a lot of people watching and listening who work virtually. And so they're selling, let's say, digital products. So if you don't have a physical location where you can't pull from a geolocation, mm-hmm. How do you know whether or not you have to sell or collect sales tax? If I'm selling, let's say, an ebook or an MP4 file, a video file, do I need to collect sales tax for that?
I don't understand. Collecting so digital goods, and I'm going to use that generically because it varies by state, but digital mm-hmm. goods are also subject to state tax rules. Some states tax MP3 files, some states don't. So your first thing you need to do is figure out, am I selling something that's taxable? But if you are, usually now that's subject to change, but sometimes it's where the business owner's place of business is, which would be the address. Sometimes it's the server, where it's sent from the server. So digital goods is a whole nother set of rules that are very complicated. In some states, it's where it's delivered. Like if you have a phone and you deliver an app that's got a cost to it, or it's sales, it's going to be where that app is. And that's our next patent that we've done is we've got a patent pending on sales and deliveries to mobile devices to capture it at that point of sale, because it actually is mobile.
Yeah. So it's extremely complicated, as you've said. For somebody who's listening, what do you recommend if they're selling digital goods? What's the first action they should take to learn what their sales tax regulations are? Look at their state comptroller?
You can go to the state. Every state, it's all public information. Mm-hmm. That's the benefit of living in the United States. Everything's public. They can go in and search, a keyword search, digital goods. And that's the word I would use, is digital goods. If you're going to go to the Department of Revenue at Kansas, they have a search box. And it will filter down to probably a publication that says, this is taxable, this is not taxable. So it varies on how they define digital goods.
Okay. All right, good. So before we go any further, do you enjoy this? Do you enjoy learning about taxes and how to best pay them? Is it something that's fun, or is it just something that is like, this is your business and you've learned about it and built a career out of it? Or
No,
in the,
I love it. I love working for taxpayers. I always tell them I work for you. I don't work for the tax collector.
Mhm.
And, we always want to be an efficient business. You don't want to overpay because that cuts into your cash flow. And you
Mhm.
don't want to underpay because that means that you should be subject to audit risk. But no, I love this. It's so there's no boredom to it at all because you got 45 states. No, I love working for the taxpayer.
That's great. And I love your motivation behind it too, is when it comes down to it, it's helping people do what will benefit them from either side.
Well, another thing, Benji, spend management is very important to small businesses. They have to control their spending. So if you're selling, and of course you're really basically a collector on behalf of the purchaser is the one actually paying for the tax. And so
Mhm.
you want to make sure you don't collect tax that's not, the taxpayer doesn't have to pay.
Yeah.
So it keeps your cash flow, from being less because you're overpaying in taxes. So,
Well, and you have a great white paper on your site, which is this, by the way, um, www.geoinvoice.com. If you're listening, we just flashed that on the screen. That the white paper talks about how that can really impact the margins of a small business and be a make or break kind of thing, where if you're overpaying, you may not be able to continue doing business.
that's exactly correct. It can be as much as 10%, the sales tax. So it varies from state to state. Alabama, I think, is now the highest. But in Texas, it's capped at 8.25%. And that's still 8.25%. If you're selling a $6 hamburger and you're over collecting, that eats into, and you have to come up with the difference if you don't do it correctly.
Yeah.
The vendor.
Do you happen to, which impacts your net profit, which you weren't expecting, and then you can't reinvest in the business and it won't grow?
Exactly.
Do you, just out of curiosity, happen to know what the state with the lowest sales tax happens to be,
Um,
or one of them?
they're pretty competitive. I would have to look at my database because we do
Okay.
have all those rates. Who is the most competitive? They're all about, I'd say they're all about 8%, from
Okay.
6 to 10%. But I could look that up actually.
Sure.
I'll get that information for you.
Okay, it's
That's
just,
a good question. Most people want to know the highest.
yeah, well,
Well, there are some states that don't have any, like New Hampshire, Washington, Oregon, Montana. There's about 5 states that don't have a tax at all, sales
Oh.
tax, but they have a big income tax. So,
yeah.
or I shouldn't say big, they have income tax.
All right, let's focus on GeoInvoice.
Okay.
You introduced it, but give us some just details behind the app and how it's grown and changed and who it's helped and how it works.
So the reason why I developed it is I was in the oil and gas industry, and I was on the operator side, and my job was to look at invoices and make sure that the vendors didn't charge us more or less than what the tax was. And we looked at the rules too. And I had some vendors that I called, and I asked them, I said, how did you figure this out? I mean, how did you know that this rate was what it was in Wyoming or whatever? And they said, well, we don't really know what we're doing, but we do want to do it the right way. We just don't know how. And it was like, oh, that's a problem that needs to be solved. So I left industry and went into business for myself and did a lot of research, even tried to learn how to code. And I got to Hello World and thought, yeah, somebody else has got to do this. But and then it just dawned on me that we can use the GPS receiver in our mobile devices. They all have them to pick up the point and then build. And so we built a geospatial system, and we have every tax area in a geospatial format, which is a digital format. Mm-hmm. So Harris County is in digital format. We have over 30,000 municipalities, hundreds of special purpose districts, every county, every state. So what that means is we just take that point, that lat long, and we run it through and say, tell us all these polygons that this person is standing in, and then it's related to a tax table.
Okay.
So what it does is it simplifies, and it's very accurate. It's the most accurate system on the market. Some of the proprietary systems use zip codes, which are not as accurate because zip codes are used to deliver mail. And even when you use addresses, addresses are designed to deliver mail. They're not designed to collect sales tax.
Okay. So let's give an example here. I'm making notes for what I'm going to ask. Let's give an example of people. We mentioned food vendors, and food vendors doesn't just have to be a food truck. It can be somebody who has a cart, or me with my cart out on the street selling ice cream here in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
It's raining today. Who else? What other types of people with side hustles or businesses can use this kind of app?
Well, a lot of, the gig economy is here, and there are a lot of people that are doing work for Uber and Lyft, but some of these people have developed their own clientele and they have their own delivery business.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my app, GeoInvoice Streamlined Sales Tax app, would be very beneficial, low cost, because right now it's free. There is a paid version. It's free. You can find out if you deliver from, where the point of delivery is, and that, of course, depends on state law. The app is very beneficial to that. If you're on your own, doing your own side hustle, delivering, doing an Uber type of business, and you have to collect sales tax on that service, the GeoInvoice Streamlined Sales Tax app is fantastic for that. Because once you stop and you make that delivery, that's usually the point of sale.
Okay. So really, anybody who is mobile, who is moving around.
Yes. But the brick and mortar, or even if you're working out of your home address is usually your place of business, which is where you're going to collect the tax when you ship to Wyoming or to Colorado or whatever. But it's the mobile workforce there's a market for this, for the mobile workforce, field services, oil and gas, people that work along pipelines, people that sell out of their, trucks, fairs, festivals. That's what it's for.
Okay, good. Have you heard back from people as far as how this has helped them?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we get good feedback. We even get suggestions. We had a suggestion a couple of years ago that we implemented from one of our customers. And it really was so they said, why don't you implement the Google address search? We just had it where you just type in the address. So now you can search any prominent feature that's in the Google Places catalog of prominent, like, Mount Rushmore. You just type that in and it'll give you all the state, the county, and the city tax rates, if there is whatever tax rates are the point that they've assigned to Mount Rushmore. Arrowhead Stadium, it doesn't matter, any prominent place.
I love that, because if you are a vendor and you're showing up at an event, you may not know the address, although it'll pull it geographically. But that's pretty cool that you'd be able to just type in, I'm at the Cistern in Houston, or I'm at the St. Louis Arch, or
yes. And so you can also just ping the location. You don't have to. We've tried to eliminate as much data entry, because that's where you have errors, operator error, when you enter. So if you put 1100 Main Street, Houston, Texas, it can be a different place than 1100 Main Road, Houston, Texas. I've actually done tests on that. So it depends on how you type it in.
Okay, good. What would you say are some common errors or mistakes when it comes to paying sales tax or accounting for it?
Well, for the gig economy, the most important thing that people need to understand is you're in business for yourself. And that means you have to keep a lot more records. You're in business. You have to keep records. And that's the biggest problem, is they don't realize they're self-employed. You don't have to be a special entity like an LLC or corporation. You can be a sole proprietor and you're working for yourself. And the value of your company is part of that is the record keeping and the books and records that you keep. So I recommend at the very beginning, even if you don't do it for more than a year, keep good books and records, because you don't want to have any notices coming in and you don't want to have to deal with it. That stops your forward motion with your operations if you have to stop and answer a question from a tax agent. So you're in business for yourself.
Do you like any particular software to keep record?
Well, I use QuickBooks. Most people do,
Mhm.
but I am looking at other. There's so many different options out there, like FreshBooks and Xero. So
I like
QuickBooks.
Zero. I use it for invoicing, and I really do like how it works.
Yeah, some of these newer companies are coming up, and that's much easier to
Mhm.
if you're not an accounting person to manage. So yeah, those are good accounting systems.
Okay. So, are there any legal ways to save on sales tax? I mean, obviously, if you go to income tax, there are creative ways to write things off, and obviously everything above board. But is sales tax pretty rigid, and there's not much you can do?
Well, for the small and well, yes, there are some. We call them exemptions. So
Okay.
one way to save is to know that it's non-taxable. But then there's another category called exemptions, and that is different status than what we call non-taxable. So, for example, just for example, in Texas, for the oil and gas industry, processing equipment is
Mhm.
exempt. So that means, but if it's exempt, that means you got to fill out a form.
Okay.
Non-taxable means it's just non-taxable. That's really the only way that you can save. There are for large corporations pollution control exemptions, which I have done for the oil and gas industry, and there's also incentives for large businesses, tax incentives. But pretty much, if you're selling and it's taxable, there are very few loopholes, and I'm not going to use. It's not a good word, but there are very few loopholes.
Yeah.
Income tax, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can reduce your taxable income.
Okay. I won't use that word anymore. Loophole.
No, it's okay. Loopholes are good. Tax
Um,
avoidance. Tax avoidance is legal. You can legally avoid taxes, but
Tell me more about that because I have heard that, and I've heard trying to battle the IRS on that. You're never going to win, but you can legally avoid it. So,
well, if a statute is written and it's interpreted and it's in your favor and it's reduces your tax, then you can apply that statute. You can apply the ruling or the revenue ruling. That's how you legally avoid a tax. You can't stretch it out to where it, is not applicable factually. So you have facts and you have law, and when those intersect, or if they dissect, if they're not together, then that's when the problem is. So there's in income tax, there's a lot of facts involved, just like in sales tax.
yeah.
Everything is very fact intensive.
Okay. You're a CPA. Do you think everybody should work with a CPA if they're in business for themselves?
It depends on the complexity of the business model. If you're just selling something that is, well, of course, if you start selling in other states, sorry about that, Benji, let me get this back going here.
No,
If you're
fine.
selling in other states, you may be subject to income tax and on the sales in those other states, not just sales tax, but because you have income in that state. So yeah, if you're going out of your state and you have multiple jurisdictions and you have a lot of complex services that you're selling, or you're selling a lot of complex tangible personal, yes, I would recommend having a CPA help you with that.
Okay. And what about a CPA versus somebody who's able to do books but not certified?
So there are two types of accountants. There's financial accountants and there's tax accountants. And tax accountants are the nerds, and they're weird, but because we don't really care about. Anyway, so the financial, they can help you too with taxes. It's just like anything else. Everything gets very specialized.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the industry. A tax accountant would be more skilled in areas in taxes with respect to specific industries. So,
Okay.
and that's true with the financial reporting too, and the financial accounting. It can be very specific depending on the industry.
Okay. So basically, what I hear you saying is if you're just getting started, you can do this on your own, especially if things aren't terribly complicated. You're not selling all over the country or the world. As things get more complicated, number one, it's in your best interest to offload this to somebody who's more skilled in it, both your bookkeeping and keeping track of taxes, sales tax and income tax. And the further along you go, the better off you are going with somebody who is certified and more specialized, especially when it comes to accounting for taxes.
Yes. It's money well spent.
Good. So going back to the app, and we're getting towards the end here, but going back to the app, without giving away any, secrets or intellectual property here, what's in the future?
Well, we have one patent pending, and that is for delivery of a digital good to a mobile device, so for example, the states can enact a tax rule that says, instead of worrying about the server and the origination, where the sale originated, that the destination, where the destination of the service is where the tax is going to be assessed for sales tax. You have to think about the fact that these devices are mobile. They're driving all over the place with their owners. And so when you drive into a state and you take delivery of a good on your mobile, they want their piece of the action.
Yeah.
Even though it may have been, the origination may have been in, New Jersey, some server in New Jersey. So it would simplify it. It makes it much more simpler than saying, oh, it's from the server, it's from where it originated. Just use destination-based sourcing is the most simplest, most easiest way, especially with the technology we have nowadays. And then the second thing that we're developing, and we're pretty close to making it available to the public, is our field service sales tax for the oil and gas industry. It's going to be a single site, unified system of being able to search for the taxable status of complex oil and gas field services. And also we have a mobile app that ties the field ticket into the invoice so that we have an audit trail and they can get rates and rules. Once you get rates and rules, it's easy to make a report, and then it's easy to file the return.
Cool. So 3 more questions. Number 1, and these are fun ones, not that all of these haven't been fun, but this is what I ask everybody: what music or artists get you through the day?
I like all kind of music. I like classic rock, a little bit of bluegrass.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. I just went to a bluegrass concert that was in the Woodlands.
Oh,
It was at a church in the Woodlands.
Yeah, cool.
Any favorite artists?
I like all the old classic artists. I like, the Eagles, and I like Elton John. Of course, I like Flatt and Scruggs, and I do play the banjo. I have my banjo over here, so I get bored, pick around on it. But
that's awesome. Yeah. I have not seen you play the banjo before. But
I don't do free gigs.
Oh, okay. So I have to pay you.
No, I don't even do it for pay. It's just for relaxation. But yeah. So.
I was going to say I could pay you, and you'd have to collect sales tax on the gig.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to figure that one out.
I'll leave that to you. And finally,
as a matter of fact, that is a big part of that we have customers that have these music gigs, and they go from place to place. So yes,
it's absolutely true. So would someone have to collect sales tax on that?
Depends on the state.
Wow. I'm glad I'm not a working musician anymore. Although it'd be easy with GeoInvoice. And
exactly. Yes.
On the screen.
Very easy.
So finally, and this is again something I ask everybody: what beverage, and it doesn't have to be alcohol necessarily, but what beverage starts your day, and which one is involved at quitting time?
Oh, I'll start every morning with. This is 8 o'clock, rich and winey and bold coffee. It's like diner coffee. If you put some half and half in it, you're like you're at a diner. It's the best coffee. That's what I start, and I drink it throughout the day. At the end of the day, probably Community Porch Breeze iced tea.
Oh, that's fun.
It's the best iced tea. Yes. And a lot
Very
of
good.
work. Yeah.
So tell us how people can best get to know you and GeoInvoice, and give us some next steps here.
Well, if you need you can always go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, and the app is called GeoInvoice Streamline Sales Tax, and you can download it for free. There's no charge. You can use it for 30 days. All of the paid features are good for 30 days. Once that 30 days is over of using the premium features, it goes back to the free the app. We don't charge you. You have to make that decision yourself. I recommend you. One of the things too, Benji, it's good for is that a lot of people use it for what we call trans-border or cross-border pricing. So if you live on the Louisiana border, some of the rates in Louisiana are less than the ones in Texas. So if there's a Walmart in Louisiana, you can ping that, you can find that, that rate and compare it to the Walmart that you use in Texas. So there's a lot of cross-border sales tax comparison done in like Iowa, Indiana, all those states go back and forth. And so for the average taxpayer, the average person, they go like, well, I'm going to just drive over here 5 miles and I'll save 1%. So it's very good for that.
That's great. So if I'm buying a big screen TV or investing in some appliances or something like that, and I'm not far from the border and it's cheaper over the line, it makes sense. And like, that you can find out through the app, huh? Yeah,
well, you can, if you know the address of like or if you're buying a car, you know the address of the dealership, you type that in and go, oh, well, if I buy this car, it's going to be 10% here in Texas, or let's say in Colorado. But if I go right over here to, Kansas, it's going to be 8% at this dealership, and I'm going to get paid. So yeah, you can use it for comparing tax rates for, and there's all kind of studies done on cross-border shopping, people doing it to save on sales tax. That's the Amazon model. Was I can ship to a state and I don't have to collect sales tax. Now that's been repealed with the Wayfair case, but Amazon is collecting in all states now. But it's a competitive. It can be very competitive. But if you want to get in touch, you can email me at Susette@GeoInvoice.com. And if you have any questions or want to reach out, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And just to be clear, this is how to spell Susette, Sussette at GeoInvoice.com.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we also have all that information in the App Store and the Google Play Store.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think this was great. I appreciate it.
I do too. There's not a lot of people who can make sales tax fun and interesting. So I appreciate what you're doing to keep this very current and very relevant in a very quickly changing culture and business climate. So I think that's awesome. And that's why I wanted to talk today. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, guys, this is Benjamin Portnoy from Side Hustle Elevator. If you like what you have been listening to and watching, you can go to sidehustleelevator.com. We have all kinds of interviews and articles and helpful tips on how to do business better, make more money, and keep more of it. So www.sidehustleelevator.com. My guest today has been Susette McNeel, and it's been a lot of fun. So thanks so much for talking.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care.